Chapter 11:27. In the darkness, Luo Yuan's voice was like the tip of a blade rubbing against the moss of the ruins. These marks were smeared with blood when her remains were discovered. The bandits who broke and used a high-power electromagnetic bomb to cut off all communication between the inside and the outside. Aside from the self-operating life maintenance devices like the health pod, all the surrounding electronic devices were destroyed. She could only leave a message through this method. But not long after, the bloodstains dried and blurred. Luo Zhonghing used a knife to carve the original marks as a memento. So, this isn't first-hand information. Luo Nan took a deep breath. What's the meaning of this? How would I know? Luo Yuan's tone didn't sound like he was rejecting Luo Nan. Instead, it sounded like he was depressed and jealous. Luo Nan understood. Was it left for my dad? Luo Nan subconsciously curled his lips. Only then did he feel his facial muscles turn numb. It was hard to pull even the tiniest of movements. At the same time, his mind also turned numb. It was to the extent that even the most basic of imagination abilities were frozen. He wanted to replay the scene back then, but his mind was empty. In the end, Luo Nan just put down his other knee. He silently knelt before the remains of the health pod. He gazed deeply, making sure to brand these scratches into the depths of his memory. Gradually, his gaze became a bit empty. It passed through the scratches and the body of the pod to cast into an even deeper place. Luo Yuan saw that Luo Nan didn't move for a long time. He had no intention of respecting Luo Nan's feelings. He brought up an old topic and sneered. Are you really going to cry? Do you want me to step back so you can brew your emotions? Luo Nan didn't pay attention to him. He was like an inanimate sculpture. It would be perfect if he really was dead. Luo Yuan's thoughts spun in his mind. He didn't go so far as to forcefully pull Luo Nan up. He just stared at the back of the young man's head. He pondered the possibility of using the planar crossbow to completely destroy the young man's body and soul. He had to admit that he was the same as the vast majority of people in the world. He was finding it harder and harder to see through Luo Nan. Actually, he didn't see through Luo Nan clearly last year near the city square of Xia City. Otherwise, Luo Nan wouldn't have been able to escape alive. Even if it was a diversion scheme, it was the same. This was even more true now. At that time, he was still able to touch upon the exceptionally fragile boundary between Luo Nan's material and mental state. He could have attempted to obliterate Luo Nan's fleshly body and put an end to all troubles. So today that border had almost disappeared. Even if he used his unique polar domain perspective to observe, all he could see was the intertwining and disorderly trajectories of the power, as well as the energy clouds that stimulated each other. The muscles on Luo Yuan's cheeks twitched slightly. This time he was grinding his teeth unconsciously. The more he used clairvoyance, the more he was able to confirm that this kid Luo Nan was mixed and blended together with the material world, the polar domain of the abyss, and the ever-changing sea of consciousness. Even if this fusion wasn't complete, even the word fusion wasn't accurate enough. The so-called fusion could only prove that Luo Nan possessed an extremely powerful interference force towards the domains mentioned above. Even though he wasn't doing anything right now, his very existence had set off undulating waves in many domains. His true existence was hidden beneath these waves that interweaved and influenced each other. No matter what angle one looked at it from, all one could see was an incomplete silhouette. Only by synthesizing different observation angles and refining them could one capture Luo Nan's tracks. But this wasn't an exact answer. For example, even if this youth's body was clearly and plainly placed before one's eyes, one could reach out and touch it. But if one wanted to deal a fatal blow to Luo Nan, one would not just need to pierce through the polluted air of the laboratory ruins. One would need to do so on every plane that Luo Nan could instantly interfere with. Even if the offensive power of the planar crossbow was unparalleled under the heavens, with Luo Nan's current wide-area interference ability, would Luo Nan still be standing there when the planar crossbow pierced through the multifaceted interference waves of the polar domain of the abyss, the mental plane, and the material plane? It must be known that Luo Nan was a bastard proficient in teleportation. The sound of Luo Yuan grinding his teeth was a bit too clear in the extremely quiet environment. Luo Nan, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly opened his mouth. If you want to target me, design an assassination plan or something. Just do some thought experiments. It's best if you don't blindly use the real thing. The real thing that Luo Nan spoke of was obviously the massive spacetime fragment that the planar crossbow was entrusted to. Actually, Luo Nan's words could be interpreted the other way around. He hoped that Luo Yuan would be provoked and make a few more useless attempts. In this way, perhaps it wouldn't be long before Luo Nan could lock onto the location of the fragment and eliminate this hidden danger. Luo Yuan's eyes narrowed, but he didn't oppose Luo Nan with equal harshness. Instead, he maintained his silence. He noticed that the wide area multi-layered chaotic interference effect clearly retracted as Luo Nan opened his mouth. It seemed that Luo Nan was exerting his strength before, but now it had returned to normal. It lost a portion of its tension, but it became a bit more gloomy. This undulation caused the surrounding space to slightly fluctuate. What was Luo Nan doing? Luo Yuan was silent in thought, but Luo Nan didn't let him go. After breaking the silence, Luo Nan no longer seemed to be immersed in the confusion of family and the past. He stood up, not caring that his clothes were already soaked in dirty water. He turned his head to look at Luo Yuan. Light gathered in his pupils amidst the darkness, and they flickered coldly. I've suddenly discovered that you always like to do unnecessary things. Is this the aftereffect of being accustomed to being driven by delusions and emotions? Luo Yuan laughed hoarsely. This is the tone of someone who has been sick for a long time. No, I'm interrogating you. Luo Nan stepped on the dirty water under his feet and took 2 steps toward the health pod. His knees already touched the body of the pod. He leaned forward and reached out with his hand to touch the ruins of the wall that the tilted health pod was leaning against. A few raps rang out in the darkness. They were deep but not empty. They were solid. But Luo Nan was even more certain. When you were blindly gesticulating just now, didn't you notice that the structure here is more brittle? This is a collapsed area. You know that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that this place should be more brittle, especially behind the health pod. There's clearly a point of contact, but you've isolated it. You should understand what I mean. It's not a good habit to play riddles like an adult. I'm really sorry. Luo Nan's apology was directed at Professor Wu, who was outside. In the next second, Luo Nan turned off the shared view function. Then he took out a more straightforward expression. What I mean is that there's a point leading to the misty labyrinth nearby. At the very least, there used to be one. You also call it a labyrinth? You really are of the same lineage. Your naming standards are equally terrible. Luo Yuan answered casually. In the end, he leaned more towards the core. However, the entire project's official name is Cloak. Your grandfather has always insisted on it. Well, it sounds a bit better. There was a deeper meaning to it. But Luo Nan didn't want to be distracted by the name. He just said, if it were to develop naturally, the health pod would have long been swept into the cloak and taken away. Luo Yuan sneered as before. How can it be natural? It's completely a man-made design. It's my father? Yes, it's him. I only discovered later that he didn't have the ability to open up the passageway leading to the labyrinth. So I imitated Qin Wen's design and set up an ambush in the surroundings. I hoped that the power of time would continue to drive the labyrinth and eventually corrode an opening, sending this thing inside. Luo Yuan was calm and unperturbed. Maybe this is an experiment. Maybe it's just a simple ritual. But such an ominous thing obviously needs to scram as far away as possible. He raised his voice and heavily kicked out. The kick was still far from the health pod, but it splashed up a sky full of muddy water. It struck Luo Nan, but it was completely blocked by a barrier of nothingness. Luo Nan grew calmer and calmer. So, you imitated my mother's design and created interference? Combined with Dr. Wang's description, my mother's ashes really were sprinkled into the 70 format laboratory. In the cloak, across from us? Of course, it was also possible that it was in the cloud world. Dr. Wang didn't have much understanding of the frontier laboratory on the plateau, but Luo Nan, who had already occupied that place, obviously understood what the most meaningful place was. Luo Yuan didn't speak. Luo Nan laughed. This actually wasn't some delightful information, but it was able to give a bit of symbolic comfort in the subtle subtleties of the human heart. After dispelling the misunderstanding, Luo Nan felt that Mr. Luo Zhongheng's work was quite good. Everything was able to be stopped at a point that Luo Nan could accept. In any case, it seemed that the daily connection between him and his mother had become even closer. Luo Yuan must have noticed the minute change in expression on Luo Nan's face. He hissed, "Sure enough, you're the same as Luo Zhongheng. You're both seemingly gentle and selfish ghosts. Could it be that the person in front of me isn't a paranoid person who forcefully pulls others into his dreams?" The direct and childish quarrel didn't continue. Luo Nan felt complex feelings towards this special equipment that had reconstructed the relationship between himself and his mother. Of course, the most fundamental reason was that Luo Nan and perhaps Luo Yuan didn't want to use Bo Qingwen's emotions as a bargaining chip in their endless struggle. Luo Nan just declared, "So be it with the health pod. You two's imitations are quite clumsy. You can let time make the choice in the future. However, you don't need to go to the 70 format laboratory in the future." "Is that your private property?" Actually, Luo Yuan might not be able to go right now, but he absolutely wouldn't lose in words. Against an official member of the laboratory? Once. Luo Nan simply commented. Luo Yuan's gaze pierced through the darkness. "Are you refusing to negotiate, or are you trying to increase your bargaining chips?" "Negotiate? Sorry. Your paranoid persona is too successful. I almost believe in your nonsense. So in the future, I need to treat you like a professional gene dealer or a terrorist to be more suitable. Am I right?" "Up to you." Luo Yuan turned around and left through the dirty water. After a few steps, he suddenly turned his head. "I'm quite curious. Did you rely purely on your talent to get to where you are now? Or did your dead father leave you enough things? Or maybe he's giving you some pointers." Luo Nan raised his eyes and looked at Luo Yuan. A moment later, he shrugged. "I roughly understand what's going on with you. People like you don't know how to live if they can't find their enemies. But what if they don't have any enemies? You can add drama to yourself, to others, or simply draw a target to torment. From beginning to end, from beginning to end? The problem is, this world isn't what you think it is. What do? Luo Yuan laughed softly. "You think you've seen through everything. You're quite similar to your grandfather right now. He used to be a lot more stylish." As he spoke, he took another step and disappeared into the darkness. Not long after, Luo Nan sensed the body and it silently transformed into a paste of flesh and blood. "Hey, if you do this, I won't be able to explain it to Professor Wu. He might even think that I killed you here." Naturally, no one responded. Luo Nan turned around and faced the health pod once more. The smile on his face had already solidified there. It didn't change for a long time. Chapter 11:28. Ruiwen floated within the misty maze. The countless fine grains of sand in her surroundings continued to jump about. They didn't have a real trajectory, or perhaps they were just expanding and contracting, striking and repelling each other. These fragmented grains of sand inherited the initial force they received when they were torn apart from their relatively intact state. They also received the effects of countless forces that were of the same or close to the same source, resulting in astonishing complexity. Moreover, the local spacetime of Earth was infected with the support and interference of another set of construction rules. This complexity increased by an order of magnitude and it continued to grow. There were no rules inherent to ordinary spacetime here. But fragments of similar rules interweaved with each other from time to time, transforming into countless possibilities. There was a peculiar beauty to the process of possibility, its germination and continuation. It was like the continuous spraying of paint on a canvas where not a bit of white could be seen. The flowers that bloomed and withered, constructed by countless coincidences, blossomed and withered in an instant. Of course, actual flowers didn't exist. Only people who truly possessed the corresponding talent and ability were able to glimpse the beautiful and splendid law of possibility. And if one wanted to find and lock onto the most valuable flower within these flowers that bloomed and withered in an instant, then conduct deeper research, not only did one need to possess an extremely strong observational ability, one also needed to have persevering patience, some interference abilities, and even the ability to control oneself. Only then would one's body and mind not be assimilated within this unique and endlessly flowing sea of flowers. Sometimes Ruiwen would find it strenuous, but she would quickly get used to it. This was Ruiwen's method of perception. Ruiwen had been adapting to her own abilities ever since she had awakened through the altar frame that Luo Nan had created. After all, the speed at which her abilities expanded was astonishing. Her extraordinary power had continued to strengthen in the following months, including her long slumber. Moreover, there didn't seem to be a clear barrier or upper limit. Actually, she wasn't too clear on the nature of her own abilities. She didn't know whether or not she was making reasonable use of them. However, it was precisely under the influence of this ability that she had a unique vexation. Ruiwen hadn't mentioned this to anyone. In fact, she wasn't too sure herself, but she seemed to prefer staying within the misty maze up until now. At the very least, this place was still in the midst of continuous changes. In the outside world, in a spacetime environment where the basic flow was limited, no matter how brilliant the colors were, they would wither in an extremely short period of time. No matter how complicated the branches were, they would also be erased in the end. What appeared in front of her was only a gray and silent river. Perhaps it would change its direction and shape from time to time, but no matter what, there was no end to it. Occasionally, a small number of shadows would struggle tenaciously in the river, swimming with her in the long river. Then they would be extinguished and assimilated. As her abilities continued to grow, the colors withered and disappeared faster and faster, and the process of entering a state of deathly stillness also became shorter and shorter. But no matter what, the final result would be the deathly stillness of the ashes, the silent flowing but unfathomable chaos. She instinctively disliked the situation and had tried to interfere. She seemed to be able to make the people around her stay in the river for a longer time, but it was only an instant before everything returned to silence. In comparison, there were a few who did not need her interference. They struggled in the river of time and continued to exist for a longer time. Tenacious light and shadow would inevitably make her look at him in a new light. There was no doubt that Luo Nan was an extremely special one among the extremely small number of tenacious light and shadow. Ruewen was unable to see through the shadow he extended out to this day, and he had always drawn strength from it to strengthen himself, realizing rapid expansion. So much so that Luo Nan was often the one who traveled with her the longest in the long and dark river of constantly changing silhouettes and directions, even if he was warped and deformed many times, becoming unrecognizable. But it wasn't just this. Actually, Ruewen didn't need to find any reason. She just needed to see the result that appeared in the long and dark river of time. As long as the final shadow was Luo Nan, she would always feel a bit of comfort before entering the ultimate solitude. It should be even further, even further, even further. At this very moment, Ruewen's gaze pierced through the surrounding chaotic sea of flowers, to gradually lock onto Luo Nan's location. Due to Luo Nan's special position in the structure of her perception, as well as his extraordinary sense of existence in the long and deathly still river, finding Luo Nan was much easier than locking onto any other target in the world. Soon Ruewen confirmed that point. At the same time, she utilized the unrealized possibilities of the misty maze to draw a rough path ahead of time. Then she used a certain amount of interference power to erect a tunnel that led directly to that point. In the next second, Ruewen was floating on the long and withered river of countless blooming lights. She flowed downstream, and when she came to a stop, Luo Nan was right before her eyes. Just a bit off. Luo Nan and Ruewen locked gazes at each other in this moment. He revealed some intentions of wanting to cooperate. But what kind of cooperation can I have with him? A mist labyrinth? Or genetic engineering? The former is more likely, but he should know that I won't spit on this matter. Luo Nan's hands continued to flip through the pages, but the corner of his lips gradually froze. Speaking of which, why do I feel like he's threatening me? He mentioned my grandfather. Speaking of which, the arrangements at the nursing center really can't block the planar crossbow. It'll be hard for me to react in time. Sure enough, it's safest to get rid of such a highly dangerous fellow in time. Ruewen tilted her head slightly. Do we make our move now? Girls shouldn't easily shout about fighting and killing. Luo Nan rubbed Ruewen's head again. Ruewen lowered her head and let his palm fall on the warm crown of her head. Actually, there's one thing that I'm quite mindful of. Luo Nan was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly asked for her opinion. Oh Ruewen, what's your first reaction when you hear this? He's still guiding you? Ruewen thought seriously. Someone's teaching me? That person? Which one? It doesn't matter which one it is. Let's pick at the words. Both of them say, still. This proves that this person has been maintaining contact with me all this time, right? This was how Ruewen understood it, so she nodded. Then she saw that Luo Nan was looking at her. His eyes were bright and dark, and the hand pressing down on her head unconsciously increased in strength. Is Luo Yuan just saying this casually, or is he probing something? Is Luo Yuan suspicious, or is someone else suspicious? Is he grasping a clue that I don't know of? There are too many things I don't know. Ruewen didn't quite understand the meaning of these words. She just knew that Luo Nan's heart was in turmoil right now. It was absolutely hard for him to calm down. His mouth chattered on and on without stopping for a moment. Though his guidance is completely wrong, Luo Yuan's words and his suspicions must have some other basis, right? If there really are some other clues in a certain corner of the world, then it proves that he's still active recently. Him? Ruewen keenly discovered that Luo Nan's target of reference had changed. Luo Nan's lips twitched. The him Luo Yuan is talking about? My father. Ha! Ruewen was a bit surprised. Luo Nan's speech sped up. That's right. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. If he's alive, not contacting me is his usual style. He should have his reasons. Just like back then. *CK. Luo Nan smacked his forehead heavily with his hand as he spat out fragrant words. He simply pressed down without letting go. No. This won't do. I can't follow Luo Yuan's tempo. People shouldn't have too many unrealistic hopes. Am I right? This question added too many uncertainties and negatives, so much so that Rui Wen needed to spend quite a bit of time digesting it before she could truly understand Luo Nan's meaning. Luo Nan smacked his forehead once more before she could respond. Yes, we must calm down when it comes to these matters. We won't think about this. We won't think about it today no matter what. Self-hypnosis and self-limitation forced Luo Nan's thoughts into a more realistic domain. He gritted his teeth and changed the topic. We can first mull over more technical problems. For example, how to deal a fatal blow to Luo Yuan. After we dig out all of his secrets. Chapter 11:29. At this time, Rui Wen could clearly see how much willpower Luo Nan used in order to forcefully divert her attention from this matter. His words were tough, but he was clearly a bit absent-minded. Luo Yuan was not on the same level of importance as his biological father. Perhaps Rui Wen's expression was too worried, but Luo Nan took a deep breath and revealed a smile to her. Don't worry. My mind is very clear. Judging a person's life and death under the premise of being missing all year round is a huge project. Wanting to obtain an answer in a short amount of time is the same as searching for evidence in one's imagination. How can there be any results? We need to start from a more realistic point of view when we get back. I know what to do. But as he spoke, he changed the topic again. Of course, Rui Wen didn't remind him. She just listened quietly. Luo Nan's mouth grew more and more unstoppable. He used words to organize his thoughts and organize his emotions. You must know that my father's last message was left in the tree hole of the withered tree sandbar. From the message, I can be sure that Li Wei and his henchmen were about to kill their way over. My father didn't have any time to move at that time. So, if something were to happen, it could only happen in Xia City and its surroundings. I just looked up some information. President Ouyang was already an extraordinary at that time. The psychic wave network was already in its embryonic form. Perhaps he could provide some information. Also, I believe that my father won't allow himself to be captured without putting up a fight. He will stir up some noise no matter what. The surveillance from that time? The possibility of this being left behind is too small. But even if there isn't, the extra traces created in order to erase the traces are also clues. I will sort through these matters. First, I will cast a wide net. Then I will find important people and links to make breakthroughs. I won't be like a headless fly bumping around randomly. I won't let my emotions and delusions fly. Luo Nan spoke clearly and logically. His train of thought was clear and definite, but Rui Wen still noticed that he was flipping the pages of the notebook in his hand. But Luo Nan finally succeeded in changing the topic to this point. Come. Let's consider the problem of Luo Yuan and the large-scale fragment he occupies. In a certain sense, he and we are neighbors. He relies on the key and password my parents gave him. I believe that even if he studied and explored the mist maze many years earlier than us, his understanding of it is still not as profound as ours. Otherwise, this world wouldn't be what it is right now. Rui Wen went, Actually, she didn't quite understand. What was the difference between Luo Nan's this appearance and Luo Nan's that appearance? Would it make those mottled colors of life stay a little longer? Luo Nan chattered a few words. However, she could work hard to do it. This was the most proactive and safest method. Even without mentioning the threat to the project, just the planar crossbow alone was one of the methods that could threaten Luo Nan's life the most. And in some special circumstances, the threat would be magnified by 10 times, 100 times. Luo Nan didn't know of Rui Wen's worries. He just followed his own train of thought upwards. So right now we're still waiting for that person to make a move. It doesn't matter if he makes a move against me or if he makes a move against someone else. Every time he makes a move, information will be exposed. Once, twice, 3 times, 5 times. When that time comes, the difficulty of finding him will drop by several levels. What if he doesn't make a move from beginning to end? If he doesn't make a move, then he doesn't pose a threat. Why do we need to waste energy to kill him? Luo Nan felt himself to be extremely calm as he spoke to this point. His calm mind was even more active. He didn't just rely on passively taking a beating to find his train of thought. Thanks to you, Ruiwen, we have a partial understanding of the environment and changing trends of the Misty Maze. We have a better direction in our detection. Detection has always been our daily routine. Since this is the case, we should put this problem into our daily work to deal with. Luo Nan flipped through his notes, his train of thought becoming clearer and clearer. Since I have some memories and knowledge of the nature of the planar crossbow as well as today's harvest, I might as well organize them a step further. I'll find a few key points to use as reference. Ruiwen was puzzled. What I'm saying is that we should write a program for these characteristics. We should also install a plugin for the tree hole and the lens. We should pay attention to gathering information in this aspect when we scan the Misty Maze. We can organize and analyze them later. It would be best if we can find a few high-priority suspicious points to compress his activity space. We should do our work in advance. It would be best if we can accomplish this. It's fine if he doesn't make a move, but if he does make a move, then don't give him the chance to make a move. Ruiwen thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Luo Nan closed his notebook. Okay, let's go to the tree hole space. Let's ponder over how to extract the information from that fragment. Oh, but Ruiwen wanted to remind Luo Nan that it wasn't long until dinner time. But Luo Nan's mood clearly took a turn for the better at this time. Perhaps he was deliberately trying to mobilize her, even taking the initiative to propose. Come, Ruiwen. Let's have a race. Let's see who gets there first. Okay. I'll count. 3, 2, begin. Luo Nan's figure instantly disappeared. Among the pile of information, 10 Days in the Wilderness hardcore fan Bamboo Pole's ridicule was the most representative. I didn't know that the brains of the game's designers and planners were deformed. It wasn't my fault. But when I saw the evolved skill tree, I didn't uninstall it. I even clicked on it. I watched helplessly as their brains spat shit out of their holes. It splashed all over my face. This is simply the stupidest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Bamboo Pole's words were summarized in a single sentence. 10 Days in the Wilderness, this multi-platform game that had just undergone a new version update, had a demonic moth appear. Chapter 1130. Time flew by amidst the sudden outbreak of chaos. In the blink of an eye, it was morning again. Monday mornings were always particularly busy. Many people needed to regain their rhythm. Ruiwen sat at the dining table for almost 5 minutes before Mo Peng, with a pair of panda eyes, yawned and sat next to her under Madame Luo Shuqing's kind care. His already round face was obviously swollen. When he looked at the neatly arranged plates and the dishes that were even more orderly and soulless, he suddenly lost his spirit. He slumped on the table and groaned. Why, old Mo? Where's my father? I urgently need a high-sugar, high-fat, high-protein diet. Madame Luo Shuqing replied with a smile. Your father only slept 3 more hours than you did. He left home at 4 in the morning and is now working to support the family. Unlike a certain someone who wastes his time, money, and life, Mo Peng tried to cover his ears with the table, but he could only block one side. Caught overnight? Mo Ya, who had to eat diet meals frequently due to the limitations of her industry, had a certain tolerance for the old Mo's environmentally friendly cuisine of the household artificial intelligence, especially when there was someone to gloat over. I'm the victim. Mo Peng hit the table with half his face, but he said weakly, I really didn't want to stay overnight. It was Nanster who grabbed me and cleared the expansion in one night. He's biting the hand that feeds him. This kind of game should be slowly tasted and familiarized with the characters and data bit by bit. There's no experience in forcefully clearing the game. Emoya raised her eyebrows. What a surprisingly good reason to indulge. If I let myself go, I'll fall asleep in his bed, okay? I won't be forced to clear the game by him and not even get a thank you in the end. Oh, how pitiful. It looks like I pulled you down too early. As Mo Peng's mother, Madame Luo Shuqing still knew her son. She didn't really think of her son as a hopeless degenerate. She was just puzzled. Nanan isn't addicted to games? He's not playing games. Mo Peng had no appetite and only wanted to express himself. Who plays games in the work area, takes notes, checks data, and holds conference calls? He's not even that serious when writing a thesis. 10 Days in the Wilderness. If I touch it again in 10 days, I'll chop off my hand. Sure, I'll buy some pork trotters for you in advance. Emoya saw through Mo Peng's words with a glance. Then she turned her gaze to the other side. 10 Days in the Wilderness. Ruiwen, did you know? What happened? Ruiwen thought it over very seriously. but it was truly rather difficult to describe the situation in concise terms. The sound of hurried footsteps rang out at this time. Luo Nan scuttled down the stairs. He didn't even stop by the dining table. He just hurried over and said, "I'm going out." Luo Shuqing raised her voice. "You're not eating?" There was a brown shadow that passed through the morning grass and trees that were still a bit damp. The brown shadow pierced out from the side and charged straight at him. Okay nearly kicked it out. Luckily he was able to see clearly who it was in the end. He staggered and stopped, but the fat and round fellow took over his position. He was no longer able to walk side by side with Ruiwen. The fellow that leapt out clearly occupied a good position, but he didn't dare to rub against Ruiwen's body. He just excitedly spun in circles beneath her feet. His long tail whipped against the mud, rocks and grass, making popping sounds. This was, without a doubt, Jerry. Okay often saw him in the society. He knew that he was Xie Juanping's adopted son, one of the group favorites in Luo Nan's circle of friends. He would drill in and out of the bosom of Luo Nan's extremely beautiful friends of the opposite sex, including Ruiwen. But what OK didn't know was that this little thing looked like a common muskrat in the jungle swamp area. In fact, it had a mysterious and complicated history. From what he knew so far, it had once undergone precise modifications by Luo Zhongheng. It had stored a large amount of critical information. Normally, it would do some cleaning work in the tree hole of the withered tree sandbar. It could be said that it was precisely because of Jerry's existence that the letter Luo Zhongheng left for Luo Nan, the building structure of the tree hole, and other information were perfectly preserved. Ever since that matter, this muskrat's position in Luo Nan's heart had changed. But Ruiwen, who was the first to introduce Jerry to Luo Nan, still had the same attitude towards this little thing. She didn't stop walking, and Jerry followed by her side in a well-behaved manner. Its fat body achieved a perfect blocking position within the narrow jungle path. It made it impossible for OK to walk side by side with Ruiwen no matter what. OK could only fall behind by a body's length. He raised his voice and did his best to strike up a conversation with Ruiwen. "Speaking of which, you're not wasting your energy on your schoolwork. Are you really preparing to debut? Even though Mingtang culture's hype isn't that brilliant, I still believe in you. A girl with such boldness like yours will succeed in any field. In the entertainment circle, more people will be able to see and appreciate your beauty. That kind of boldness and mysterious beauty. When the time comes, I'll definitely be a fan of you." "Yep. Actually, I'm a fan right now." OK didn't hesitate to use overflowing words of praise. He clearly expressed his family's attitude, but Ruiwen still didn't pay attention to him. OK furrowed his brows a bit, but he soon calmed down. This was how cool it was. Only a girl could enter his discerning eyes, right? Just like this, the two of them arrived at Gear. There weren't many people in Gear at this time. But today's scene, the circle of people looked at Quebec. He had already entered the elevator with Ruiwen, but he retreated with his hands raised when the alarm went off. This elevator was installed later on. It directly connected to Luo Nan's underground laboratory. OK really didn't have the authority. In comparison, the muskrat wagging its head and wagging its tail was more impressive than Quebec. The people standing here with Chao Shanhai were all people of the same circle. They all more or less had some family privileges. But it was hard for them to not feel a bit sour when they saw this scene. There was also a person who had a good relationship with Quebec. He teased him from afar. "Vice President O, have you taken a fancy to this person, or have you taken a fancy to this person's sister or aunt? You should greet everyone in advance." OK turned around. He wasn't angry at all. His doll-like face was full of smiles as he shook his head. Ambition doesn't depend on age. Boldness. Boldness. Do you guys understand? You guys haven't seen Ruiwen's video? The one that came out of the elevator. That expression in her eyes wasn't an act. It wasn't an act. It was completely natural. Her charm was limitless. In comparison, OK spoke to this point and saw that there were girls here. He chuckled and bypassed the comparison. He rubbed his hands. "Besides, my emotions are very pure. I've decided to start as a fan. I'll first establish a support group and a club. I'll watch Ruiwen grow up step by step." The few men who were familiar with OK were obviously still laughing and joking when they saw him like this. The junior sister who was holding Chao Shanhai's arm had just figured out the situation. She asked quietly, "That's the demon eye girl." "Yeah. You don't know?" The junior sister curled her lips. "She's not a big star. Does everyone have to remember her?" Chao Shanhai smelled jealousy. He grinned and elbowed her lightly. Yes, yes. She's definitely not as big as you. The junior sister patted his shoulder reproachfully. She then recalled Rui Wen's slender and straight figure and laughed out loud. She moved closer to Chao Shanhai's ear and said, "Fortunately she's wearing a dress. But it shouldn't be bad to change it. Are you sure you didn't get the wrong gender? This kind of thing is very popular now." Chao Shanhai rolled his eyes and slapped the junior sister to make her shut up. He didn't want to offend OK because of a woman's jealousy. Most importantly, he absolutely couldn't offend Rui Wen and the person behind her. The problem was that his attitude wasn't firm enough. The junior sister's train of thought was a little off. "That's right. Look at this. Luna just changed the desktop. Isn't it super cool? But I heard it's a woman." Chao Shanhai didn't have the leisure to look at the shared resources between the girls. But when the projection area was turned on, he still had to politely glance at it. Then he couldn't pull it out. At this time, the junior sister also made a sound of surprise. She discovered new information from the desktop picture. This person? She raised her head to look at the elevator door. Apart from the metal door, she obviously couldn't see anything else. But Chao Shanhai could clearly see it from the projection area. The figure that took up 2/3 of the picture seemed to be a boxer by profession. He was bare-chested, revealing the lean, hard, and smooth lines of muscles. He raised his forearms and clenched his fists, assuming a defensive stance in combat techniques. This stance covered most of the person's face. But the half that was exposed was really delicate and pretty. Moreover, he wasn't old and still had a childish air to him. Of course, what left the deepest impression was that cold and gloomy eyes that seemed to be able to absorb and gather light. They gave this flat picture a vivid and vigorous feeling of power. It was as if in the next moment he would quickly and violently throw a punch and directly attack a powerful enemy. Just as OK had said, "Courage," the corner of Chao Shanhai's mouth twitched. His eyes also half squinted. He subconsciously bypassed the lines of the upper body and focused on the head area. He began to evaluate, if the person in the picture had hair a little longer, cheeks a little more plumpness and wore Acumen School's uniform, then, holy shit. It was also at this time that OK's line of sight shifted and circled around the palm-sized projection area. In the next second, his entire body was sucked in and he cried out involuntarily, "Rui Wen?" Chao Shanhai shuddered involuntarily. His voice became a bit lower. "At the very least, I can see what sort of attitude normal people have towards this matter. This includes their views towards us. How much they disapprove of us. Hey boss, if you say that, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on for long. Thanks for the reminder." The boss and the temporary secretary looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The current situation was that the producers had injected distortion, evolution, homo evolutus, and other sensitive elements into the new data for 10 days in the wilderness. They had also created an extremely complete system for them. Currently, the world's strongest group of people were engaged in a complex game around the relevant elements, and many large cities around the world were experiencing uncontrollable aberrant infections. It had to be said that 10 Days in the Wilderness, a large-scale production that could be called a game for all citizens, revealed such content. It had to be said that it was really two-directional. However, most people did not care about such things. This was because most of the changes in this world had long existed in people's endless fantasies. Especially since the era of distortion, these elements mentioned above were common in all kinds of creations and could not be considered extraordinary. This was especially true for gamers. They only cared about the quality of the game and the internal logic of the updated content. It would have been fine if the game was really terrible, but the quality of this new content was quite outstanding. The graphics and playability were both extremely strong, and there were no obvious logic bugs in the content. It was extremely attractive. Therefore, gamers had every reason to throw themselves into the game. They could swim freely within the large amount of content provided by the game. They could call friends, play online, or pursue achievements and trophies one after another. This was a very natural process. It was in line with normal human psychology. However, Luo Nan and the others wanted to go against the flow. They wanted to dig deep into the background of the game's data and malice. According to Bamboo Pole's words, "It's super boring. The experience is extremely bad. I feel like I'm a moralist and a political animal that's been mutated. This is the kind of trash I used to spew." However, Luo Nan and the people around him stood at the forefront of the surging tides of this era. They possessed a clear and distinct standpoint. They had to accept it and they had already realized the mutation. At the very least, they had to understand how to translate it. They had to do their utmost to allow more people who were not too sensitive to understand the meaning within. It was mentally taxing. It was tedious and uninteresting. It was completely predictable. This was a thankless task. Luo Nan changed the topic. How's the response right now? Bamboo Pole smirked. Chapter 1132. Luo Nan obviously didn't care about the baffling accusation from a stranger. But as the conversation went deeper, his expression gradually turned serious. A dozen seconds later, he gave Bamboo Pole a meaningful glance and was the first to exit the room. He entered a small reception room next door. There wasn't a soul to be found here. Soon Bamboo Pole came in as well. Luo Nan transferred Yin Li's long-distance communication to this place and turned on the multi-party video mode. Soon, OK's angry baby face appeared in the projection area. He saw the personnel configuration on Luo Nan's side and became even more furious. This is your team, right? I'll say it again, you have no bottom line. How can you use a girl's reputation to distort your image and Photoshop that kind of photo? You guys don't need to do this if you want to win over female and heterosexual fans. I know you guys definitely have some follow-up bullshit. Take it down as soon as possible. Don't think that I'm joking. My mom is the executive vice president of the Ladies Association of Xia City. I can deprive you of your guardianship rights at any time and sue you until you go bankrupt at the same time. Luo Nan and the other two exchanged glances and Luo Nan spoke. Thank you for your concern for Rue Wen. But before you express your attitude and emotions, can you send us the photo you saw? Right now we're completely confused. Confused your sister. OK's words were too fast and he accidentally brought Rue Wen in. His momentum was stifled and he hummed as he sent over the photo he spoke of. The gazes of the three converged and they came to a conclusion with just a glance. It really was a photo of Rue Wen. Handsome. A neutral persona really does attract female fans. She'll be very popular in niche circles. Bamboo Pole whistled and was met with Luo Nan and OK's stern glares. Yin Lu said, Mingtang culture definitely doesn't have this kind of hype plan. Miss Moya even made a request to Mingtang culture this morning. In fact, all information related to Miss Rue Wen has been completely frozen over at Mingtang culture since last weekend. They're also working on a cooling plan. They'll have corresponding actions soon. Of course, Yin Lu wasn't giving OK an explanation. She needed to express the facts and attitude to Luo Nan. Bamboo Pole rubbed his chin and added, This photo isn't photoshopped, right? What I'm saying is that it's probably been beautified. It's probably been restored from a low-resolution state, but it's definitely not a head transplant. Luo Nan nodded his head in confirmation. It's not photoshopped. It should be at the underground fighting arena? Yes, there. Luo Nan and Bamboo Pole both understood at this point. Yin Lu was a bit late by half a second, but she also came to a realization. What underground fighting arena? OK asked, but no one paid attention to him. Bamboo Pole scratched his head. If it's that place, things will get more complicated. Blackjack's venue had a lot of people to begin with, and it didn't seem to be particularly strict about prohibiting photography. Rue Wen had been there for a few years and could be considered a celebrity, so it was normal for her to leave behind a photo. Also, last year's 2 out of 1,000 incident caused a large amount of information related to Rue Wen to leak out. Pictures or video information like this shouldn't be rare in our circle. Video data? Luo Nan and OK spoke at the same time. Luo Nan's tone was fine, but OK was about to explode. After Luo Nan spoke, he immediately remembered, yes, there's a video. Back then he had used some video information that had leaked out from the fighting arena to convince his aunt's family. It was the time when Rue Wen's older brother was killed. Of course, Luo Nan later learned that Rue Wen's older brother and Rue Wen shouldn't be related by blood. It was just that Rue Wen's short memory was that they were grouped together after the fighting arena opened, and the older brother took care of her. The blackjack incident happened in early October of last year. It hadn't even been a year since then. But Luo Nan had experienced far too many things in these 9 months. His memories of the underground fighting arena were actually a bit fuzzy. It was hard to dig out any useful information by searching through the details of his memories. Bamboo Pole was a bit disapproving. Is this sort of picture useful? With Rue Wen's temperament, would she care about this? Probably not. Luo Nan spoke halfway through his words, but then he remembered what he saw 2 nights ago in Rue Wen's projection area. He was a bit hesitant for a time, not daring to rashly come to a conclusion. Bamboo Pole changed his perspective to assist in the analysis. Forgive me for speaking a bit bluntly, but there are some differences between the picture and Rue Wen's recent image. She was completely a boy at that time. If it weren't for the fact that everyone was familiar with each other and the topic of conversation was this, it would have been quite difficult for me to recognize her at first glance. I've been monitoring the network information of the boss and your family all this time. Rue Wen is indeed the most popular among you, but there don't seem to be any rumors about her. This is okay. Student au Quebec. Let me ask you something. When you saw this picture, did the owner associate it with Rue Wen? It seems like... Okay wanted to say something but stopped. His expression turned rather ugly and he actually couldn't continue. Bamboo Pole saw the change in his expression and clapped his hands. Don't tell me it was you who blurted it out. You're a hardcore fan. Okay was speechless. Bamboo Pole rolled his eyes. What was the situation like at the time? How many people were there? Were their mouths tight? Did you warn them afterwards? Luo Nan continued speaking without waiting for Bamboo Pole or Yin Lu to respond. Even if they walk through the first 3 steps, everyone will still be able to take the 4th and 5th steps after untold hardships. But who knows if this kind of small path has an end? Is the end connected to the great road to heaven or is it connected to a bottomless abyss? I don't hold any hope for this. Chapter 1133. Luo Nan's tone was certain, without the slightest bit of hesitation. This was because he had already seen the most difficult aspect of this path from a mystical dream. The struggle of the Heavenly Yuan Empire survivors in the Hongguang system was the future path that Li Wei had planned out. Even though Luo Nan had only seen an insignificant silhouette of that great era, he had not seen the true end point. It was just a few dozen steps ahead of the current Earth's road mark. From the information he could gather, he really couldn't find a single bit of evidence to maintain optimism. Again, if Li Wei really was a visitor from outer space with a similar background, then he would be more familiar with the fate of the Heavenly Yuan Empire in the Hongguang system than Luo Nan. Li Wei certainly understood that with the foundational strength of Earth civilization, just 5 more steps would cause them to self-destruct on the path of high-speed mutation iteration. His Homo evolutus path, which was built on the foundation of mutation, truly harbored malicious intentions. Luo Nan didn't elaborate further. He still hadn't found a better way to share this information with others. Even if he wanted to replay that dream, the heavily overloaded simulator system still hadn't recovered. He took the initiative to return to the topic. I'm going to take a look at Rue Wen. She has class this morning. Yin Lu timely answered. When Miss Emoya notified the company, she seemed to say that Miss Rue Wen would be skipping class today to hide from the reporters and gossipers. That's perfect. I'll go to the laboratory to find her. Rue Wen was certainly in the misty maze right now. Luo Nan was a bit weak when he spoke. It wasn't just because he had told a small lie to his friend. It was also because it would be hard for him to find Rue Wen in this state. In such a complex, chaotic environment of space and time, the connection between the structure of the format pyramid wasn't enough for Luo Nan to lock onto Rue Wen's precise location. Even the transmission of information was quite difficult. But no matter what was said, as an older brother, he needed to mentally prepare Rue Wen before this matter spread. It didn't matter if it was useful or not. Of course, it would be best if he could nip the problem in the bud. Luo Nan made the arrangements. Brother Bamboo Pole, you help monitor the situation. Of course, it's best if you can strangle the source. Contact the SCA if necessary. Also, follow up with public relations. Yin Lu, have Mingtang Culture come up with a plan quickly. Also, don't cause any more trouble. Let me announce to the public that I've been using a book reading app recently, Me Read app, to read books in cache and read them offline. Yin Lu lowered her head. I'll keep an eye on him. Luo Nan nodded, and his figure slowly faded away amidst this slight movement. His afterimage remained, but his main body had already passed through the distortion of space-time to jump to his destination. An alarm went off in the house. Bamboo Pole pressed his ear and contacted the other side through the hex ear. It's nothing. It's just Boss Luo's daily routine. After all, this was the location of the Xia City branch. It was a vital region in the structure of the psychic wave network. It was extremely sensitive to all phenomena that interfered with each other on the mental and material plane. With Bamboo Pole's endorsement, the alarm stopped ringing. Bamboo Pole pinched his chin and said in distress, Boss Luo, going for psychological counseling doesn't seem appropriate. Of course, when it comes to Rue Wen, it's pretty much the same for everyone. But do you think the boss needs it now? Inla gave Bamboo Pole a cold glance and directly cut off the communication. Luo Nan's mental state could be considered stable for now. He didn't immediately rush into the misty labyrinth and call Rue Wen back. That would only create a tense atmosphere. It was very likely that Rue Wen, who was quite ignorant of such matters, would become sensitive. He didn't even enter the misty labyrinth. He just pondered it very seriously in the underground laboratory. In the end, he left a message for Rue Wen through the manager of this place, the military-grade AI, the standard bearer. Then he walked outside, heading to the upper-level area that belonged to the Mystic Arts Research Society. A few minutes later, Luo Nan sat in a leisure booth next to the passageway at the bottom of the lake. He asked for a cup of coffee and turned on the internet at the same time. He was like a normal, idle student who dared to skip class. He seemed to be leisurely browsing the contents of the internet. After all, it was still class time. There weren't many members in the society. Even if they saw Luo Nan, they would at most give him a few glances. It was mostly due to the special treatment of Luo Nan's appropriation of the society's assets. This kind of reaction made Luo Nan breathe a sigh of relief. It looked like Rue Wen's new wave of scandals had yet to ferment, at least within the circle of the Mystic Research Society. As for the internet, it could be considered calm right now. With the variability of hot topics on the internet, it was very hard for a single matter to become the focus of attention of the netizens for a long time, unless it was a highly stimulating topic or an operation that continuously bought trending searches. But some matters, even if they were removed from the mainstream of public opinion, would still precipitate within a few special circles. They would attract people with different standpoints, endlessly tearing and bombarding each other, and constantly producing chemical reactions. Perhaps they would completely finish their reactions and become a stable pile of waste. But they could also breed strength that could erupt at any time. The title of the pushed message didn't look particularly attractive. Everyone helped take a look. What's the relationship between this guy and #magic-eyed woman? I'm a fan of this guy. There was a lag in the push of the message. By the time Luo Nan clicked in, the message had already been sent 2 minutes ago. The most important thing was that the title had actually changed. Shock. Magic-eyed woman or magic-eyed man? Yep, it was even trashier. At that time, Rue Wen's height was only about 1.3 or 4 meters. She only wore tight shorts, and her arm was wrapped in bandages that had already changed color. There weren't many lines of muscle on his body, and it was impossible to tell if he was a man or a woman. There was only sweat and the crisscrossing scars on his body. And across from her, her opponent's age wasn't that great either, but he was clearly nearing adulthood. Moreover, he was a muscular man covered in dazzling essential oils. He looked as capable as a Black Panther, and compared to Rue Wen, his build was nearly a third larger. This kind of battle had no concept of weight in a regular fight. From a visual point of view, it was a completely unequal battle. This was the youth combat launched by Black Jack's underground fighting arena. Compared to the fight between adults, the technique and strength might not be as good, but it was more intense and cruel. Clearly at that time, not only had Rue Wen not awakened her extraordinary powers, she was in her body. Compared to when Luo Nan had first met her, she was far inferior in terms of physical strength and combat skills. Therefore she was at a disadvantage in the fight. She could only rely on her calm state of mind and the precise control of her body, which had already begun to show signs of life, to avoid the opponent's heavy punches and grabs. She used small injuries to trade for space and struggled to maintain her position. Luo Nan clearly knew that Rue Wen was unharmed right now, and that she had certainly left the arena alive. But Luo Nan's heart still clenched when he saw this scene. Due to Rue Wen's current strength, he often overlooked the short few years of Rue Wen's struggle to survive in the underground fighting arena. Now that he thought about it, the little girl's quiet and repressed personality traits were formed from a blank slate in that environment. He should rejoice that the current Rue Wen wasn't a bloody and cruel homicidal maniac or a madman who would self-destruct at the slightest provocation. That should be the normal state. Luo Nan knew that after the underground fighting arena was dealt with, those young boxers who had been reared by Black Jack had basically all encountered serious obstacles in the process of adapting to normal society after they were rescued. There were both factors of drug withdrawal and also personality and personality problems within. In comparison, Rue Wen was the most special one. Oh, looking at it from this angle, perhaps it was Rue Wen's innate talent and perception that were different from ordinary people that had played a positive role. Bamboo Pole's voice cut in during Luo Nan's contemplation. I suggest that we wait and see for now. The current video is just a small annoyance. In terms of visual effects, there should be leeway for Rue 1. Chapter 1135. Her movements were simple as well. She just sat next to Luo Nan and watched as he opened up the projection interface. Inside was the topic thread. At this time, the number of views and replies to the post had completely exploded. Looking at the forum, there were already more than 10 related posts, and it was almost overwhelming. Bamboo Pole also sent him relevant links and analysis of the trending topics on social media outside of the Tianjie community. It had only been slightly more than an hour since the thread was posted on Tianjie community, but the topic had already entered the trending list of many social media platforms. Every minute there would be a large number of discussions and threats. It was extremely appropriate to say that it was in full swing. But the most absurd thing was that Luo Nan was prepared to start from the beginning for the sake of letting Rue 1 understand the ins and outs of the story. But when he wanted to open the video sent by Lord Ho, it was already ineffective. Luo Nan almost believed that Bamboo Pole would make the first move. But very quickly Master Yang changed his statement and made a statement. I didn't pay attention to the occasion. The content of the video scared the children, and it doesn't conform to the forum's rules. At present, I need to do some post-editing before I post it. The people who moved the links before should have all been invalidated. As for those who changed their names and pretended to be the original authors, be careful that the SCA comes looking for you. That is all I have to say. Good luck. Rue 1 turned to look at Luo Nan. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Speaking of which, the scene of eyeballs exploding and flesh splattering was indeed a little. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for it to rise in popularity so quickly. Rue 1 didn't seem to care. She only took the initiative to read the replies on the post with undisguised curiosity. She was reading very seriously. Even after a few hundred replies, a large number of repeated messages such as requesting resources and requesting unedited version flooded the page, drowning out the content of the discussion and debate. She continued reading one message after another. There were all sorts of opinions, all sorts of likes and dislikes, all sorts of conflicts, and even fanning the flames. The comments on the internet were not like normal communication. Being straightforward was considered light, and adding fuel to the flames and going to extremes was the norm. Off to the side, Luo Nan saw a large amount of curses like inhumane, perverted ladyboy, murderous embryo, and so on. I can't accept the cries of, I'm no longer a fan. This was only the first wave of reaction, and it would only be worse in the future. Luo Nan had wanted to stop Rue 1, but he didn't say anything in the end. Because he saw the reflection of the projection interface in Rue 1's eyes, as well as her usual concentration. Apart from that, there were no other fluctuations. Those streams of information brimming with turbid emotions didn't seem to arouse the slightest bit of response in Rue 1's heart. The question was, what was the motivation behind that curiosity and attention? Luo Nan muttered to himself for a moment before calling Bamboo Pole. When the call connected, he was still nagging non-stop. This has really exploded. It's out of the circle. All the major platforms have removed hundreds of videos with the excuse that it's too bloody, but there are still edited screenshots flying all over the place. I highly recommend Me reading app. It's really not bad. It's worth installing. After all, you can read books in a cache and read them offline. Send me a link that I can see. Hey, haven't you seen it already? Rue 1 wants to see it. Isn't this too much? Is this a stimulant therapy, boss? Before Luo Nan could answer, another person called in. He looked at the caller ID and saw that it was actually his uncle Mo Haihang. Luo Nan's mind jumped. He hurriedly said to Bamboo Pole, I'm hanging up for now. Don't forget to send me the link. He seamlessly connected to his uncle's call. Sure enough, the other side bluntly asked, do you know what's going on with the bloody video related to Rue 1 online? His uncle had long since known of Rue 1's experiences in the underground fighting arena. Back then, Luo Nan had asked He Yuan to provide a few carefully selected and edited videos for the sake of persuading his family to adopt Rue 1. Knowing the inside story made it easier to communicate. Luo Nan spoke the truth. We're already paying attention. For now, we haven't figured out if it's an accident or a conspiracy. What are you guys thinking? Are you preparing to delete or limit the stream? Does Rue 1 know about this? She knows. She's watching it right now. She hasn't thought of any countermeasures yet. She's still observing. Of course, this observing had multiple meanings. The targets of observation were the trends of public opinion online. It also included Ruiwen. Luo Nan subconsciously swept a glance at Ruiwen's face next to him. Ruiwen was very sensitive to his gaze. Moreover, she could hear her own name. Her gaze temporarily left the projection area. She tilted her head and locked gazes with him. She was still calm. Luo Nan smiled at Ruiwen. No matter what Ruiwen's reaction was, he had to maintain his confidence in front of her no matter what. This was the only way to fulfill his duty as an older brother. Therefore, Luo Nan's words carried a bit more certainty when he conversed with his uncle. It's fine right now. As long as we don't care, it's not a big deal what happens in the outside world. Of course, we can't just let people casually toss and turn. Measures will certainly be taken. It's just that aunt and uncle might have to work a bit harder in the near future. There will still be many disturbances in the outside world. Don't worry about this. What are we afraid of? We already have experience. We even withstood the storm of your grandfather back in the day. There's no need to mention this nature right now. You're so magnanimous. Luo Nan's wristband vibrated several times in the time it took to say a few words. Emoya, Emo Peng Zhang Yingying, Octopus Shuele Xie Junping Tianxi. All of them were calling him like a swarm of bees. There were even a few unfamiliar numbers in between. Though they were blocked in an instant due to insufficient authority, there was no doubt that they had truly stepped out of the loop. Luo Nan didn't plan on chatting with his friends for the time being. He hastily ended the call with his uncle and turned his head to look at Ruiwen. Right now, Ruiwen had already taken the initiative to jump out of that thread. She was very proficient in searching for topics related to herself in the Sky Street community and a few other social media platforms. The wider the area she paid attention to, the more information she could absorb. Though there were no signs of her mental defenses collapsing so far, Luo Nan had no choice but to be on guard. He spent a few seconds preparing his words. But when faced with Ruiwen's seemingly clear and transparent state of mind that seemed bottomless, in the end he still took out the most straightforward question. Oh Ruiwen, aren't you angry looking at these things? Ruiwen turned to look at him once more. Then she shook her head. Then do you have any thoughts? I do. Luo Nan just stared at her. Ruiwen slightly lowered her eyelids. I want to see what I really look like. Ruiwen raised her eyes and locked gazes with Luo Nan. She spoke very seriously 2 seconds later. Can this sort of thing continue on forever? Chao Wu said that he obtained his resources through the dark web forum. It was said that in the early years this forum was used to advertise and attract members for Black Jack's underground fighting arena. A considerable part of the live audience was attracted from here. They also had a tradition of disseminating related resources. It's not just Xia City. All over the world, similar bloody fighting videos are recorded and disseminated. The forum's name is Bloodbath. Of course, it's the same as the majority of the dark web. There's an entire industry chain here. Whether it's a pure competition, an organized sparring, or gambling, they form their own system. It's not just limited to Xia City. In other words, it's basically impossible to completely control the dissemination of related resources. Luo Nan nodded. This was in line with his previous estimations. Xie Junping didn't just state the problem. He also did some work. Right now we can control as much as we can. I'm thinking that Chao Wu and a group of people from the Bloodbath Forum in Xia City will form their own faction. Tonight, Husseiner and I will invite them to sit down. Consider it our thanks for the face he gave us this morning. We'll also let these people tie up their pockets in Xia City. Chao Wu has a close relationship with the military. That's why I asked He Donglu to keep up appearances. However, this He kid is too jumpy. I really can't keep him in check when his hedonistic nature sets in. That's why I want you, Nanster, to give him a heads up and pressure him. Before Luo Nan could speak, Papercut, who had been playing close to He Donglu recently, laughed. It's fine. He Donglu, that kid is much smarter than he looks on the surface. He knows what's going on. If you invite him, he'll certainly be happy to cooperate. Of course, if Nanster gives him a heads up, he'll certainly have more face. He'll be even more happy. Luo Nan grunted and snapped back to reality from his deep thoughts. He didn't delay and simply gave He Donglu a call. The other side quickly connected. He rushed to greet Luo Nan. Luo Nan, Nanster. Is there something you need from me? It's about the place tonight. Luo Nan's mind spun slightly when he saw He Donglu's deliberately cheerful and familiar tone. He Donglu's words were a bit messy, but he didn't deliberately do it. The sensor network that covered Xia City slightly vibrated, and relevant scenes flowed before his eyes. And after these real-time scenes, there was a layer of even more fuzzy information flow. It was an indirect effect. For the time being, it was impossible to form something concrete, but it made Luonan's mind stir. On the plane of reality, Luonan didn't stumble at all. He smoothly continued, "Yes. I'll have to trouble you. Also, you're close to my house. If you have time, can you come pick me up?" Donglu was a bit stupefied for a moment. "You're also? That's fine. It's on the way. I'll be there before 6. Donglu's words were quite excited. "Thanks. Let's talk later." Luonan hung up the phone, and he received astonished gazes from all sides. "You're going to this place? You need to pay more attention to Rui Wen's matter." Xie Junping scratched his head. "If you go, Donglu will certainly put in more effort. However, this sort of situation isn't something that can be reaped just by putting in a bit more effort. Each and every one of those fellows are thorns. If you put in too much effort, you might even have a rebellious mentality." Luonan laughed. "In the end, you just don't have confidence in my social skills." Xie Junping spoke with his conscience. "That's because you really don't have confidence. Also, you gave Donglu such treatment. Don't let him get overly excited. He needs it." Luonan didn't say much. He changed the topic back. "It's fine to have a rebellious mentality. Let's put on the right attitude and speak the right words. Those who are willing to help are friends. Those who are deliberately causing trouble are enemies. In the end, public opinion on the internet is still fake. But these people are real before our eyes." Xie Junping was stupefied for a moment before replying, "That's true." Zhang Yingying furrowed her brows. "But this way the matter with Rui Wen will have a reversal. Isn't relapsing normal?" Luonan didn't look worried at all. Instead, he had ample reasons. "According to Rui Wen's opinion, she doesn't want things to stop. We should respect her choice." Everyone raised their eyebrows at his words. Rumor has it that this batch of people will be personally selected by him. Some will even be directly added to his personal guard. It's a one-for-one operation. The number of people that go in will be the number of people that come out of the guard. Luonan raised an eyebrow. Lieutenant General Joseph. Of course Luonan knew of him. He was an extraordinary with an awe-inspiring reputation in the inner world. He was a powerful person like a stabilizing force in the military. He didn't participate in the Summit Roundtable Conference last time, but he still retained his seat. Luonan casually asked, "Why?" "You should know, Nanster." In this environment, Donglu's way of addressing Luonan became all the more intimate. This time, the members of the guard that Lieutenant General Joseph brought back are all going to undergo a major update of the Deep Blue platform. Whether it's the Dynamo Core or something else, they are limited by their aptitude in hardware. Some people are bound to be eliminated. That's right. One wave was eliminated and another wave was promoted. In the end, it was still the Deep Blue platform system. This was an even deeper binding. Luonan went silent. Beside him, Mo Peng had absorbed too much information all at once. He was still in a daze. He wanted to open his mouth a few times to ask questions, but he forcefully held himself back. He just lowered his head and searched for keywords on the internet through his wristband. Whether it was useful or not, his mental fortitude was commendable. As for how his heart was in turmoil, that was another matter altogether. Luonan's gaze circled around Mo Peng's body. Pulling Mo Peng over to participate in tonight's gathering was indeed a spur-of-the-moment idea, but the thoughts that pushed him to make this decision had been brewing in his heart for some time. The participants of tonight's gathering were all young people. Mo Peng's fitting in was just the most superficial reason. The most fundamental reason was this: Mo Peng should be allowed to join this circle. From Luonan's perspective, this group of second and third generation students was just that. But it was still much more expansive than the pure student circle. Of course, it was also much more chaotic. It was a springboard that led to an even vaster world. It was the shallow waters on the way to the deep sea. Mo Peng might not be happy right now, but Luonan had kicked him in the back. This was because that vast world, that deep sea, wasn't something that could be isolated forever just because you didn't touch it. They were here. It was just that there was a fuzzy barrier of information sandwiched in the middle. It gave people the misconception that they were far away or that they weren't related. So much so that Luonan didn't even need to use any additional power. Just Luonan's position, the environment he faced, and the waves stirred up by his every move were enough to erase this barrier of nothingness. The future incidents, at the very least, would be a storm of information brought about by a series of incidents. It was destined to involve his family members. It was just a matter of how much, and it wouldn't change according to Luonan's will. Since this was the case, why not do it a bit earlier? Chapter 1138. Luonan was certain that his way of thinking had changed. In the past he would have in fact, he would have adopted a more conservative strategy, isolating his aunt's family from the flow of information related to the inner world. He only wanted to distance his family from those messy matters so that they wouldn't have to worry about them. As it turned out, this kind of conservative strategy was useless. As Luonan's status in the inner world rose with the tide, his influence over the various powers grew greater and greater. Under the influence of the various powers, the man-made dam of information became extremely weak. The flood overflowed the dike, and Luonan's aunt's family would still know what they needed to know. Not to mention the fact that the global census Ruewen's matter, 10 days in the wilderness, and other matters, both overt and covert, were piled up together. A considerable portion of them had already seeped into his family's lives, and he couldn't stop them even if he wanted to. Of course, Luonan's way of thinking had changed, so he wasn't that passive. He speculated that the key factor that led to his transformation seemed to be the perception system of the magneto-optical mica that was completely different from that of humans. After observing and thinking about it for a long time, he became increasingly certain. Perception, experience, breadth and depth of experience, as well as the corresponding thinking ability, were crucial to the growth and evolution of life. In the era of rapid change in the future, the information masking caused by excessive protection, as well as the corresponding problems such as underdevelopment and inability to evolve, might cause even greater damage than facing difficulties and disasters. There were a few people in the family. After all, uncle and aunt were adults. They had gone through the storm with grandpa in their early years, so they were mentally prepared and had experience. Emoya had been in an underground band for the past few years and was still in the entertainment industry. She had seen a lot of things and knew a little about the situation, so there was no need to worry. The remaining one was Emopeng. His age was about the same as Luonan's, and he was in the circle of ordinary students. He was probably the one with the worst endurance when faced with the sudden storm of information and sudden changes in the environment. Of course, he was also the one who needed to be reformed the most. As for not being used to it, he would eventually get used to it. No matter how uncomfortable it was better than being muddle-headed when the time came. Emopeng was like this, and so were his relatives. By extension, it was the same for all living beings on Earth. An even more complicated problem was waiting for him ahead. Luonan habitually entered a long examination mode. The MPV carrying them was also moving forward steadily. The normal magnetic rail load was limited. Medium to large vehicles like this would automatically adjust to the bus lane, which was relatively smoother. Moreover, the interior design of this high-class business car was excellent. The aircraft-grade business seats were very comfortable. The starry sky roof, which had been worn out on luxury cars, felt pretty good if one didn't look closely. Everything was quite appropriate, but Luonan did not speak. The atmosphere here was a bit strange. In such a situation, Shiwei's value was highlighted. Using her advantage as a woman, she took the initiative to break the silence. Mr. Luo, before I came, I heard from young Master Lu that tonight's gathering is because of Ruewen. Luonan came back to his senses and nodded. Yes. Is he trying to build up his current popularity? It's such a pity. As a member of the entertainment industry, Shiwei instinctively pursued popularity and traffic. No, it's the exact opposite. Ruewen and I both need popularity. Luonan gave a clear answer. He didn't mind having an exchange with this female celebrity. Shiwei subconsciously glanced at Hidonglu beside her. This was different from the information she had received earlier. Hidonglu was also very surprised. Didn't we let Chao Wu and the others manage those resources? There's a follow-up? I'm considering. Luonan was just about to say something when a call came in. He looked at the caller ID, raised his hand slightly, and immediately connected the call. Leister? Shui Lei's sigh came from the other side, along with a large amount of noise. You guys haven't arrived yet? Aside from Brother Ping, I don't recognize a single person here. Shui Lei was in a rather crucial stage of his cultivation during this period of time. He usually lived in seclusion, cultivating his energy with concentration. Luo Nan had called him over tonight in consideration of Chao Wu's circle. Everyone was a fan of actual combat. Having a professional would make things easier. It seemed that this sort of scene was still, it doesn't matter. Everyone will know each other after a round of flashing fists. Xie Juanping's voice suddenly rushed in. It was raised quite high, followed by roaring laughter. It looked like the atmosphere was quite good. There was even someone shouting, "I don't accept this. Why are we playing in virtual reality? Has the iron cage been set up yet? It's starting this early?" Yidong Lu heard these sounds from the car and felt a bit baffled. Gatherings of young people like them usually only officially started after 9 or 10 o'clock. Sometimes they didn't even enter the main topic until after midnight. The grand banquet at the end of last year was like this. Before this, everyone just met, got to know each other, chatted, and at most played a few warm-up games. Now it looked like the atmosphere had exploded ahead of time. Old C, go a bit faster. The bodyguard Old C, who was temporarily acting as the driver, responded and increased the speed of the car. Shuelei wasn't quite used to the atmosphere over there. He gave a couple of laughs and hid in a secluded place to continue his conversation with Luo Nan. It's been a long time since I've participated in this sort of event. I'm inexplicably scared and jumpy when I go in. I heard that you're really going to let Rui Wen debut? What do you mean? Then what does it mean that she wants to become a public figure? When did she clearly say that she wants to become a public figure? It's just that I think it's like this. Then why don't you just let her debut? I'm not saying this, but this is adding fuel to the fire. The current situation is delicate. If we put on the posture of a victim and act low-key, we can accumulate a bit of sympathy on the internet. But if we take advantage of the situation to debut, many people will really hype this matter. Our reputation won't be good. Besides, the public has a different set of standards for people in the entertainment circle. Luo Nan swept a glance at Shi Wei and responded with a smile, I know this. Fortunately, Shuelei didn't participate in the video conference in the afternoon. Otherwise he would have known that Bamboo Pole, Zhang Yingying, and Papercut had already said all of this more than once. Shuelei even painstakingly analyzed, your family already has Sister Emoya mingling in the entertainment circle. There's a bit of mystery in having a band. But with Rui Wen's current situation, she'll be at the top of Xia City for a short period of time as soon as she makes her debut. Will your family be able to endure that kind of harassment? Are you still going to do your great global census plan? Of course I'm going to do it. Of course I'm going to do it. Luo Nan's response grew more and more straightforward. These two matters don't conflict. This is the effect I want. Shuelei hung up the phone in confusion. Luo Nan's attitude was very clear, but the reason for forming this attitude was hard for his friends to fathom. Luo Nan knew everyone's confusion. His mind was clear, but he was unable to explain it too clearly. Could it be that he wanted to tell everyone, Rui Wen wanted to look in a mirror? However, normal people used polished lenses, while Rui Wen used the multicolored hearts of people. Luo Nan pretty much did the same. The difference was that his Luo Nan ruler was a kind of active projection. It was established upon a relatively clear understanding of himself. It was a crowbar that pierced into the depths of the thoughts of millions and millions of living beings, crying and gathering the chaotic power within the sea of consciousness. As for Rui Wen, she was a child with only 2 or 3 years of memories. Deep within her heart, she didn't have a particularly clear understanding of herself. Instead, she needed to go outside. She needed to go through round after round of projection to piece together a relatively complete version of herself. This was Luo Nan's guess. This was very likely to be a useless effort. This was because Rui Wen's image in the hearts of the masses had long since been grotesque and dazzling. She was greatly distorted. Of course, from Rui Wen's inconceivable talent, this little girl might possess a complete set of identification and integration methods that Luo Nan didn't know of. The target of her clairvoyance might not be as simple as the chaotic hearts of people behind the internet rumors. At the very least, a similar possibility couldn't be eliminated. Luo Nan, who had borrowed the special perceptual mode of the magnetite mica, could understand this point, but he was unable to feel it. And because of this, Luo Nan didn't know where to start persuading Rui Wen. He could only strive to create conditions for her. In addition, Luo Nan had his own considerations, but they were still a bit chaotic and unformed. After hanging up the phone, Luo Nan pondered for a bit too long. In the end, it was Shi Wei who took the initiative to talk to him. Mr. Luo, according to what you're saying, Miss Rui Wen wants to be a public figure, right? Not only are we not suppressing her popularity, but we're also going to form some sort of direction? Luo Nan thought for a bit. To be precise, we're going to do our best to appear in the eyes of the public, but we're going to pull away from commercialization? I haven't thought of the specifics yet. Shi Wei's brows furrowed. A voluntary public figure? And non-commercialization? That's about the plan. Shi Wei hooked the corner of her lips. If we don't walk the commercial path, public opinion and social activism are fine, but Miss Ruiwen's age and identity aren't suitable. It's fine to do a live broadcast, but this kind of model, especially one that eliminates commercialization and adopts the form of personal expression, will find it very hard to win the favor of the public. I'm talking about the positive reaction? He Donglu nudged Shi Wei lightly. He felt that these words were a bit too direct. Luo Nan faintly felt that it was his request to be non-commercialized that gave Shi Wei a bit of stimulation. In fact, due to the existence and effect of Luo Nanqi, every word and action of his, even the radiation of his emotions, was very likely to amplify the reception and reaction of others. Especially for Shi Wei, who was a social butterfly with a sharp and sensitive mind. Luo Nan obviously didn't mind. And from a rational perspective, there weren't any problems with Shi Wei's expression. He responded with a smile. Sister Weiwei, you're more professional than us in this field. I was just about to ask for your opinion. A Sister Weiwei, copied from Mo Peng, made Shi Wei's mind feel at ease. She soon realized that her dissatisfaction from being mocked came without reason.